have to fight again, it'll be to take these steps.
As we stand against the war, we also stand behind those who resist it.
More and more U.S. service members are actively refusing to participate in the illegal, immoral invasion and occupation of Iraq.
No more. We have a different path to take, and it doesn't matter what they do to us. It doesn't matter if they take away our honorable discharge, if they put us in prison.
Call it peace or call it treason, call it love or call it reason, but I ain't marching anymore. I ain't marching anymore.
I firmly believe that, we hold first-hand accounts of what's happened, so there's a level of credibility there that I think is in direct contradiction to, what some of the people who normally speak about the war say, which is elected officials and, pundits. So we bring that kind of credibility to the war.
What are the kinds of projects that IVAW is working on and that people can get involved?
One of them is Truth in Recruiting, and saying that basically informing teenagers about their rights. We want it to be a truthful recruiting process. We don't do counter recruitment, and you could kind of say that's what it is. But we want recruiters to tell the truth. We don't let kids know what exactly they're getting into. That's one of the campaigns, and we're always working on to end the war. Back in March, we held Winter Soldier, which is the 13th through the 16th, and from Winter Soldier, it was Iraqi or vets from Iraq and Afghanistan giving a first-hand testimony about atrocities that they had seen in Iraq, and from there they did Winter Soldier on the Hill, and it was seen before Congress people. So the next step is logically to get that under oath. So actively trying to end the war, actively encouraging GIs to resist. So there's lots of GI resistance campaigns.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And what is the best way, do you think, to end the war? What are we doing to end the war?
I think people need to get out in the streets. I mean, I think it has to be a real movement. I don't think one thing is going to end the war. As we saw in 2006, politicians are not going to end the war. And if you look at the trajectory and you look at, just look at that embassy that was built. It's the largest embassy in the world. Obama, the anti-war candidate, says he's going to leave 50,000 troops. They have to protect the embassy. You need at least 10,000 soldiers to protect that at all times. So you have to question, why we're really there. And so I don't think it's going to happen from politicians. It can't happen just by, people lobbying to end the war. That's not the answer. GIs have to stop fighting the war. That's how it ends. And they need the support. They need to see people in the streets that are supporting them, so that when they actually resist and when they go AWOL, that the people are there for them.
I ain't marching anymore.
We just want to tell what our 3 points of unity are, and that is to immediate withdrawal of all occupying forces from Iraq, make reparations to the Iraqi people for the destruction that we've caused in their country, and also to have full benefits, mental and physical, for all veterans returning overseas without questions, no appeals.
Do you have any opinions about the war in Afghanistan?
I'm starting to think that that's a big scam as well. If you start to look at at what kind of oil pipeline is going on, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes things. My experience was that I was a welder, and I armor plated. I'm not by myself, but with a good team of welders and a good support, other good soldiers that I worked with, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. And we armor plated many vehicles, and we saved a lot of soldiers' lives. But the war was kind of questionable. When I got back, I really researched what was going on, and I found that it just seemed like there were a lot of lies and a lot of obscurities. So that's why I'm questioning it now.
Yes, I'm out here today continuing to fulfill my oath as a Marine. I'm here for those who wish they could stand here with us. We're marching today to the Convention Center to deliver a letter to the Democratic National Convention asking that they stop continuing to fund the occupation of Iraq.
Could you tell me a little bit about your experience in Iraq and how it led you to become a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War?
Yes, in the continued war on terror, as it's called, the Iraqi people will do what the American people would do under occupation. They will resist occupation ad infinitum. If we have truly afforded them freedom and democracy, then it's time to do what the Iraqi people ask and leave their country.
I'm here today to, like the rest of us, I guess, to send a message to Senator Obama that we want to end this war, and we want to hold the Democrats and him accountable if he is the Democratic nominee for what they say they want to do, which is end the Iraq War.
Yeah, could you tell me what it was about your experience in Iraq that led you to turn against the war?
It was not being able to do really anything that I thought was good there. All I really did was drive around the country, using up fuel and delivering supplies, military supplies, along with food and water for soldiers, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, but I would have also liked to have been delivering supplies to Iraqis that needed them very badly. I was told not to even throw an MRE out of my truck to Iraqis because the reasoning was we didn't want to hurt anybody with our trucks. But I have a feeling it was not the real reason. They weren't concerned about Iraqi children's safety. They just didn't want to give away anything.
How do you think the Iraqi people feel about our troops being there?
I'm pretty sure they're extremely tired of it by now, if they're still alive. I mean, estimates say that there's over 1 million, or half a million dead, I believe. Some of the estimates, refugees, well over 1 million. And so I'm sure unless they're part of this government that's, in my mind, sort of a puppet government, then they're not happy at all.
Peace is what we're marching for.
GDLS, General Dynamics Land Systems, makes money off of every striker that gets destroyed. We could see that every time we an IED even superficially hurt a striker, the military has to buy more parts for those strikers, and it's so blatant over there. Everything on the FOB, the Forward Operating Base, says property of Kellogg, Brown and Root on it, and it's just there's no veil of legitimacy over there. It's quite obvious that to everyone that's there that there's people who are making amazing amounts of money on this war, and that's what it's all about. I joined the Army knowing that we were going to go to war with Iraq. It was pretty obvious at that point. But I was against the war, and I was open about those views all throughout the time I was in the military. There were definitely a lot more people questioning why we're in Iraq, and a lot more people started coming around and realizing that this is a symptom of a much larger problem. This paternalist government that we live under is that this war is just a symptom of that.
I was a sergeant in the United States Army. I got to Iraq in 2004. My second day in combat, I was put in the turret of an up-armored Humvee and given a machine gun and told to protect my team. And as I stand here today and look at all of you, if you were in Iraq, I would have pointed weapons at you too. And there's nothing more that I would love to do than go back to Iraq and tell those families that I pointed my machine gun and my rifle and my pistol at, that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm the nightmare for their children. I'm sorry that I bred hate for my country. And I wish nothing more for them to know that I love them and I'm sorry.
I'm Harvey Tharp. I was in the Navy, and I was the projects officer for Kirkuk, Iraq from October of '03 to March of '04. I was responsible for the reconstruction of the entire province of Kirkuk and setting up the municipal contracting for all the reconstruction efforts that were going on by the coalition in the city of Kirkuk. I was an Air Force linguist, Arabic linguist before the Navy, and in the Air Force Reserves during law school. I joined in 2000 after I got out of law school. I was a judge advocate. They were grabbing at anybody who had ever studied Arabic before, so they raided the Navy Staff Corps. So I went over to Iraq with a Navy radiologist, a supply officer, a dentist, a doctor, and a base executive officer. They sent us out to 6 different provinces of Iraq, and we sort of filled in for the jobs like projects officer, political advisor, and other jobs that weren't being filled because they didn't have the plans to fill these kind of jobs, and they didn't have the resources to do them. Their jobs were supposed to be done by civilians, but from the State Department or from U.S. Agency for International Development, the professionals in project reconstruction and diplomacy and everything else. But the reason they couldn't send them was they didn't have armor-plated, bulletproof vehicles. They didn't have security teams. They didn't have secure communications or anything like that. But when we arrived, they realized we were military, so they could afford to order us to go into these really dangerous areas of Iraq and do these jobs. So when I was in Kirkuk, I was driving around with one other guy in a plain white SUV with just my pistol and no radio, and I had to buy my own body armor from bulletproofme.com for $800, and I did that for the entire 6 months. We never did have a radio, never did have body armor from the military. To someone considering joining the military now, I would say that I was in the military for a total of 12 years, and it was very good to me. But it's a totally different situation now, and it's not, going to Iraq for multiple tours and getting PTSD. I've had very mild symptoms of PTSD, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And having the severe kinds of PTSD that will haunt you for years and years, and having to deal with what you'll see and what you'll have to do if you go to Iraq is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. I was there 6 months, and I volunteered to stay, but the Navy wanted me to transfer to from being a judge advocate to naval intelligence. They had too many judge advocates, and they needed intel officers. And with my experience in Iraq and some knowledge of Arabic, they wanted me for signals intelligence. Over there the first time, I didn't give a thought to refusing to go at all, and it would have seemed to me like physical cowardice for me to refuse to go when I was called upon to go the first time. But once I went there and risked my life every day going outside the wire, outside the base, and in this a crazy situation in a plain white SUV with no radio and everything else. Once I had done that and proved that I had the physical courage, I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything to anyone anymore. And so it became a question of moral courage to me. Once I realized that the war was wrong, did I have the moral courage to stand up and say I won't be part of it anymore? I actually joined Iraq Veterans Against the War the summer after I got out of this, in the summer of 2004, only a few months after I returned from Iraq. I was probably the first active duty officer to join Iraq Veterans Against the War. It was a long process, and some of it was not finding weapons of mass destruction, all the reasons for our being there turning out to be false. The fact that our presence there didn't seem to be benefiting the Iraqi people at all, the fact that we seemed to be there for the oil and not for anything else. And so he told my commanding officer that I couldn't voluntarily participate in the war in Iraq anymore. And his response was that you're not the only one who's had doubts about the Iraq war. And you're going to have to make a decision because I'm, as it stands right now, I'm going to order you to go into National Security Agency and do your job and very likely deploy to Iraq and as a signals intelligence officer and be a part of the combatant mission in Iraq. And your only option is to resign your commission. Did the decent thing, gave the option of resigning. You have a conscience and you have to follow it.
I am Sergeant Matthew Chereau, Individual Ready Reserve, U.S. Army. June 15th of this year, I refused to deploy to Iraq. The occupation of Iraq is illegal, unconstitutional, and is a war of aggression as defined by the Geneva Conventions, the Nuremberg Principles, and the UN Charter, which was violated when we invaded, inherently violating Article 6, Section 2 of our U.S. Constitution. This is unacceptable, as I am sworn to protect and defend my Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Our enemies are at home, ladies and gentlemen. They are here. They will kill this country with apathy, with selfishness, with greed, with materialism. We stand here in defense of the Constitution. We stand here in defense of the rule of law. We stand here in defense of our brothers and sisters who have had their services abused so deeply by the highest leaders in this land. This is unacceptable. Not by my hands will I provide, not by my hands will I take another's life who never did anything to this country in the first place. In 2006, 90% of U.S. soldiers and service members in Iraq believe that the war was the result of Saddam Hussein's involvement in September 11th, 2001. We know this to be false. We need to take this message to the service member and make them understand this war is a fraud of American military might. Let us never stand by in apathy while our rights are stripped and lives are taken overseas. Thank you.
I ain't marching anymore.
I joined up when I was 17. I don't know if, for some reason I thought that killing people was going to be cool. I don't know why I thought that way at the time, but that's the way I did, and my recruiter definitely, I think, capitalized on that. It was a lot like most people. After September 11th, I felt like I needed to do something to, protect my country. I bought into the whole propaganda, of the reason that we were going over there was to fight for freedom and democracy, and they use those words over and over and over again: freedom and democracy, and the whole concept of achieving peace through war. I believed that, and I think that before I joined, maybe my concept of what I thought war was, I've seen war before I joined the military. My idea of war was based on war movies and video games, pretty much. You know what I mean. When I got over there, I saw war for what it really was, and it's not something I want to do anymore. We had like 25 guys in my battalion that died, so. It's just, that's all you see around you is death and destruction. I didn't see any creation going on. I didn't see any democracy. All I saw was war and death. You know, we were supposed to be over there helping him out, and I mean, from what I saw, there wasn't really much helping out going on. I mean, we weren't out there fixing their plumbing, you know, giving them food and water and electricity. We were, you know, going house to house, waking up little kids in the night, scaring the hell out of them, and scaring families. You know, I saw a lot of just people that literally got off on killing. And they got away with it, you know. They shoot first and ask questions later, basically. You know, there was this one time a vehicle pulled up to our checkpoint that was on our base, and I guess the driver probably couldn't read. Most of them are illiterate, and didn't follow the signs correctly. So they just opened fire on the vehicle and killed. There was a father and his son was in the vehicle, and, you know, just ripped them apart. Didn't get any news coverage whatsoever. It was swept under the carpet like it never happened. There's a lot of stuff like that. Remember another particular event, someone was walking down the road after curfew, which, you know, they're not supposed to be doing. They said that he had like a bag or something with him. So it ended up being a bag of fruit, but they shot him, and, you know, they stuck his body in the back of the truck and brought it back on base, and they're the soldiers that did this and the one that shot him were like really proud. Really, they thought it was the coolest thing, you know, showing off this body. You know, look what I did. That particular event right there was when I realized that this isn't right. Yeah. Any dumb fuck can kill. Go to school and learn how to maybe save lives and learn how to contribute something good to humanity instead of destruction. Anyone can kill. You don't have to be smart to shoot a gun.
Iraq Vets Against the War is a group of veterans that have served since 9/11 in the War on Terror. And we stand for three things: immediate withdrawal of all U.S. occupying forces from Iraq, reparations for the Iraqi people, and full benefits for all veterans. And the reason I have the flag upside down on my shoulder is because it's a symbol of distress. Because I am very distressed. My friends are being stop-lossed and sent back to Iraq without their consent. The myth of the volunteer army is very distressing to me because it's not a volunteer army. We've been enslaving soldiers for 6 years now under the pretext of a national emergency, which is non-existent. Blackwater, Aegis, Titan, they're all mercenaries, and I have nothing good to say about those assholes. They're scamming the government. They make 15 times more than a normal soldier does, and they have no honor. And I would like nothing more than to see the collapse of those organizations. Only 1/5 of the incidents that go on are reported. So, and that's on a good day. So these guys, they are free from the law. I used to listen to them in the DFAC on Camp Taji, going on and on about, oh, we wasted this guy, and oh, did you report it? No, why? Why would we do that? I mean, they're the scum of the earth. I think the main thing for Iraq vets is to act, because we've been enslaved for so long. We've been forced to do this. Years of our lives have been given away to a war that's immoral and illegal, and we need to find a way to make that better in ourselves.
While you were in Iraq, did you see any resistance to the war among the troops?
Oh, absolutely. I had to tell you a story.
Okay, when I was in Iraq.
When I was in Iraq, I had a friend. He told me that on Camp Cuervo in 2004, that it was too dangerous to go out during the Shiite militia uprisings. And he said that the company level commanders and the first sergeants, the captains and the first sergeants started telling their guys it was okay not to go outside the wire, not to do missions. Well, the brigade commander found out about it and instituted this policy of, well, I'm going to check the mileage on the Humvees to see if they actually went out this week. And he went around with the clipboard every Monday, every Humvee in his brigade, he checked the mileage. And of course, the first unit that got caught got yelled at, somebody got in trouble, and what was the response? These first sergeants and company commanders started organizing details to drive around the base in circles. And if that's not an act of GI resistance, I don't know what is. When I was in Bellingham, after I got out of the Army, I had a nightmare, and I woke up, and I started thinking about some things. And these dreams kind of led me to a therapeutic type action. For me, it was to get up on a tower in downtown Bellingham, Washington, in front of the Federal Building, which is a symbol of all the power structure of this country that leads us into war, without thinking of the real effects of it. And I decided to protest the stop-loss policy because it's the most immoral of all of the policies in our country right now. You're sending the guys back who have already been there 2-3 times, whose contracts are up. You're breaking their contracts. It's actually illegal, come to find out when I start researching it. It's illegal. It has not been sanctioned by the federal court system. So I started protesting it and started realizing that it was a really powerful issue, because the establishment can't say, you can't justify it, except for the fact that they don't want to have a draft, because there's too many people that are opposed to an illegal, immoral war. So it's kind of the last little thing that's holding the Army together. And the Army is at the breaking point right now. As far 1 and 2 of my friends going back to Iraq for OIF 0709 is stop-lost. More than half of my company is stop-lost. So I protested that in Bellingham for 8 days and 7 nights on a scaffold that I made into a guard tower. And then I did it again in DC, and I founded the National Stop the Stop Loss campaign.
Was built. You know, it's the largest embassy in the world. Obama, the anti-war candidate, says he's going to leave 50,000 troops. They have to protect the embassy. You need at least 10,000 soldiers to protect that at all times. So you have to question, why we're really there. And so I don't think it's going to happen from politicians. It can't happen just by, I don't know, people lobbying to end the war. That's not the answer. GIs have to stop fighting the war. That's how it ends. And they need the support. They need to see people in the streets that are supporting them, so that when they actually resist and when they go AWOL, that the people are there for them.
We just want to tell what our 3 points of unity are, and that is to immediate withdrawal of all occupied forces from Iraq.
Iraqi or vets from Iraq and Afghanistan giving a first-hand testimony about atrocities that they had seen in Iraq, and from there they did Winter Soldier on the Hill, and it was seen before Congress people. So the next step is logically to get that under oath. So actively trying to end the war, actively encouraging GIs to resist. So there's lots of GI resistance campaigns.
And what is the best way, do you think, to end the war? What are we doing to end the war?
I think people need to get out in the streets. I mean, I think it has to be a real movement. I don't think one thing is going to end the war. As we saw in 2006, politicians are not going to end the war. And if you look at the trajectory and you look at, just look at that embassy.
We don't want to fight anymore, but if we have to fight again, it'll be to take these steps.
As we stand against the war, we also stand behind those who resist it.
more and more U.S. service members are actively refusing to participate in the illegal, immoral invasion and occupation of Iraq.
No more. We have a different path to take, and it doesn't matter what they do to us. It doesn't matter if they take away our honorable discharge, if they put us in prison.
Call it peace or call it treason, call it love or call it reason, but I ain't marching anymore. I ain't marching anymore.
I firmly believe that, you know, we hold first-hand accounts of what's happened, so there's a level of credibility there.
Reparations to the Iraqi people for the destruction that we've caused in their country, and also to have full benefits, mental and physical, for all veterans returning overseas without questions, no appeals.
Do you have any opinions about the war in Afghanistan?
I'm starting to think that that's a big scam as well. If you start to look at their at what kind of oil pipeline is going on, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes things. My experience was that I was a welder, and I armor plated, not by myself, but with a good team of welders and a good support, other good soldiers that I worked with, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. And we armor plated many vehicles, and we saved a lot of soldiers' lives. But I was the war was kind of questionable. When I got back, I really researched what was going on, and I found that
that I think is in direct contradiction to, you know, what some of the people who normally speak about the war say, which is elected officials and, you know, pundits. So we bring that kind of credibility to the war. To this.
What are the kinds of projects that IVAW is working on and that people can get involved?
One of them is Truth in Recruiting, and saying that basically informing teenagers about their rights. We want it to be a truthful recruiting process. We don't do counter recruitment, and you know, you could kind of say that's what it is. But we want recruiters to tell the truth. We don't let kids know what exactly they're getting into. That's one of the campaigns, and we're always working on to end the war. Back in March, we held Winter Soldier, which is the 13th through the 16th, and from Winter Soldier, it was